Good evening, everybody. It gives me great pleasure to welcome everybody for this first in the webinar series by Haystack Analytics and ThyroCare. My name is Dr. Aparna Bhanushali, and I am going to be the moderator for this session. I am the head growth and scientific support at Haystack Analytics. So once again, I welcome you all to this webinar, which is on TB laboratory diagnosis, the current diagnostic modalities in NTEP, the challenges and limitations. The NTEP, to achieve its goal to end TB by 2025, 5 years ahead of the WHO goal of 2030, is based on 4 pillars. So these 4 pillars are detect, treat, prevent, and build. So the cornerstone of the entire TB elimination program is based on detection. Not only do you need to detect the cases, those which may go missing due to underdiagnosis, but also you need to identify drug susceptibility across so that we can achieve our goal for TB elimination. And in that context, our speakers for this session, whom I will introduce shortly, will be enlightening us on how optimizing the diagnostic modalities will help us reach the TB elimination goal. So our speaker for today, our chief speakers for today are Dr. Amita Joshi and Dr. Chaitali Nikam. Dr. Amita Joshi, our chief, like I've mentioned, Dr. Amita Joshi is our chief guest speaker. She is a professor and head microbiology, Grant Government College and Sir JJ Group of Hospitals. She also has a list of several other accomplishments. She is the co-chair, National Technical Expert Group, Government of India. She is the national trainer, guidelines for programmatic management of drug-resistant tuberculosis. She is the core committee member, National Task Force, the National TB Control Program, Government of India, and she has 30 publications in national and international journal. Dr. Amita Joshi will speak on the TB laboratory diagnosis, current challenges and the limitations, and what are the diagnostic modalities in the NTEP. Our next guest speaker is Dr. Chaitali Nikam. Dr. Chaitali leads the infectious disease portfolio at ThyroCare. She is a member of the Constitution of National Technical Group on Private Provider Engagements under the NACP. She is also the member of the National Technical Working Group for collaboration between NTEP corporate hospitals and laboratories, and she has 38 publications in peer-reviewed journals. So with that, before I hand over the baton to Dr. Amita Joshi, just like to make one announcement that all the Q&As will be taken at the end of both the sessions, and we will try and accommodate as many queries as possible. If we are unable to do some of them, then we will be reverting by mail. So before that, I now hand over to Dr. Amita Joshi to please continue with the session.
Okay. Yeah. The slideshow thing? Yeah. At the beginning, let me thank both ThyroCare as well as Haystack Analytics for giving this opportunity to me, being associated as a medical college as well as a diagnostic lab with the national program for the last more than 10 years. It really gives me a pleasure to go around disseminating whatever the National TB Elimination Program, what it is called now, has achieved and has planned to achieve as per its national strategic plan, which we put forward in the year 2012. Every year, this program, as far as the diagnostic has evolved. Unfortunately, last year, because of our the national calamity, national calamity, we didn't have any active participation in control program. We are all aware, and but we are following whatever the world comes up with diagnostic, we take it into our national program, we evaluate it, and then we put forward it how best we can use all the modality. And this is well in the public domain. It was released this year at 24th March, that is the the TB Day. The main aim of this program is to provide universal diagnostic, or what we call universal DST. When we speak in the national, what we say as universal and what you say may be slightly different, but in the end, we are providing the best in by using the most sensitive and specific upfront. And every other modalities, whether it is NAT or a first line LPA or a culture sensitivity, is used in a very, very, what we say, staggered algorithm. That means any patient is not left with any diagnostic modality. So this is the diagnostic path that we are following, which we were following in 19 and which we are following this year also. And as you can see, our main aim is that every patient who comes should be given upfront a sensitive and specific. But for some reason, we are not giving upfront, but at least the presumptive TB, all notified, as well as non-responders. This was a group added on later on because initially we were addressing only the drug-resistant TB where rifampicin, but now we are also taking care of rifampicin sensitive but mono-resistant to isoniazid. So for all these patients, we give what is known as an upfront nucleic acid amplification test. It was only CBNAT few years back, but 2 years on down the lane, we have also given our own indigenous TrueNAT, both of which I will be just going briefly in my future slides that I talk about. When we give this sampled, or rather when we give this testing modality, there are two possibilities. Either I detect an MTB or I don't detect. And if I detect an MTB, again, there are two possibilities. Either resistance is not detected, which we were saying is sensitive, or we say resistance detected. Let's go on to the right hand. That is, if I detect a sensitive, what we used to call, but now I'm not detecting any resistance as per the CBNAT or TrueNAT. For all these patients, we give what is known as a ZN staining in the lab. And if they're smear positive, then only we offer them a first line LPA. So again, a molecular test being given upfront. Now, while I'm doing this first line LPA, if in this test I get a rifampicin resistance, then in the lab itself, we do a third test that is a NAT. And based upon whichever is two more, that is, if it's twice resistant, we say it is resistant. And if it's twice resistance not detected, when we say that sample does not have a rifampicin resistance. Besides rifampicin, we are also getting isoniazid resistance detection. If it is not detected, to all these patients, we say, please continue with the first line drugs, or what we say, this is a case of a TB sensitive, you must continue with the treatment that you have done. But in case if it is isoniazid resistant, they are followed up with second line LPA, and also culture is put up to do sensitivity to isoniazid, and based upon the pattern that I get over here, further sensitivity is done to moxiflox, linezolid, and if there is quinolone resistance, then we also look on for the pyrazinamide. So if you go to see in a staggered manner to the one sample that came into the tertiary lab, everything is given in a reflex pattern. So we are offering everything that is possible to these patients. Looking at second arm, that means I detected TB, but I also got resistance which was detected. Here, again, a smear is made. If positive, then we go ahead with same first line, second line, and based upon what I am getting over here, reflex, we will do the sensitivity. Here we are doing sensitivity to moxi, linezolid. Clofa is going to be introduced now, though at our lab we are offering it. Pyrazinamide, BDQ, and delaminid. Hopefully by the end of this month, this year or early next year, we will be having even the BDQ sensitivity in the national program. Culture is given, which was initially given upfront, is now given only either when a smear is negative or I need to do the liquid sensitivity for the drugs that I mentioned over here. So universal DST in the national program language, meaning I am doing upfront to rifampicin and then followed up to quinolone based upon whether it is resistance also to isoniazid. This should be done ideally before you start treatment, that is before the clinician initiates, and within a time frame of 15 days. Only possible if the smear is positive, because in the program we are doing first line, second line only to those patients who are ZN positive. So there are two methods that we are doing in the program. Either I do a molecular test to find out which are the genes which are mutating, which I say it's a drug resistant testing, or DRT, or I do the culture and then do the sensitivity, which we say is the phenotypic test. So when we are saying rapid, we say it is a genotype, and there are two modalities which are available, either a NAT or line probe assay. NAT is given usually at standalone CBNAT sites, whereas line probe comes to the tertiary care centers or the line probe assay laboratories which are there. We had only CBNAT, which was there up to 2016, but 2017-18 onwards, we had even the TrueNAT platform, which came in for detection of rifampicin resistance. In the line probe, both first line and second line is offered in the national program. And like I said, a number of drugs are available. First line liquid is only basically for the pyrazinamide. Otherwise, where demanded by the clinician, we do HRE also. And of course, second line drugs which are there. Phenotypic we know is faster, but for all follow-up, it is only the liquid culture that is done. When we talk of drug resistance, some basic knowledge has to be understood that when we are talking in the case of MTB, the drug resistance is basically either because of something intrinsic, and the mycolic acid is the reason why so many antibiotics are present in the market. I cannot use it for TB, which is also a bacteria. In addition, many of them, or rather the anti-TB drugs, go inside, but there is an efflux mechanism, which we see for the quinolones and aminoglycosides. And of course, the drug resistance which is acquired, which is the main issue which is we are facing, is which comes when there is a mutation in the chromosomal, either because I have given the wrong combination, the wrong dosage, or the wrong duration. Therefore, we say it's a man-made resistance, which is we are seeing. When we talk of genetic mechanism, the genes which are associated with rifampicin have been identified for many of the first line and the second line drugs, like RPOB for the rifampicin, INH, there are other also, but these two are the mains which are looked for by most of the molecular tests. The PNCA for pyrazinamide, the MB for the ethambutol, RSS both for your Strepto, Cana, and Tetrio, which we call as injectables. The EIS is also given for the kanamycin in the second line LPA, the Guide Guide B for quinolone, and INH, which is reflex, or rather we do it based upon the INH that I'm seeing in the first line LPA when I'm doing for isoniazid. Also indicates that this person may be resistant even to ethanamide. So coming to the gene expert, like I said, I will just rush through it because it is offered. We have standalone number, more than 600 sites which are there, which are standalone, and it's a 4-module which is given, where this methodology or reporting has been given free of cost to anybody who walks into these labs. There are 16 modules in some of the sites like ours, but normally it is the 4 modules which is there. A simple test which we say you don't require a lab for it. 1 part of your sputum or a clear sample, 2 parts of your reagents. Keep it, take it after 7 minutes, again keep it, and again after 2 minutes, you take 2 ml of it and put it into the machine. We are talking about the 81 base pair that I said, RPOB gene. It is a long base pair, and therefore there are 5 probes. If you happen to look at the screen, you will see colored graphs coming over there, and it tells you whether you have detected, not detected, and if detected, whether rifampicin resistance detected or not detected. And in that also, low, medium, and high resistance detected is indicated. We were very excited when this RIF Ultra was introduced some years back. And we thought in the program, we will be getting a much more sensitive test, because it could detect 15 CFU as against the 113 CFU with the fourth generation cartridges were giving. Unfortunately for this, it was never picked up in the national program, because though it had a higher sensitivity, when the detection of TB was low, it gave a number of false positive to rifampicin sensitivity, and hence the program never endorsed this. Now we are looking forward to the expert XDR. There is validation studies going on, and if it goes through fine, then maybe at the end of this year we will have this also. In this, not only will I get the INET A and CAT-T, which I see in my second line probe assays, but I will get additional genes which will be detected in this particular module. Now, INHA, which I'm seeing for isoniazid, will also tell me regarding ethanamide resistance. The Guide is the same that I see with my line probe, and RRS and EIS, which I see. But if you look, the sensitivity is much more, and I will show you the sensitivity for line probe to the second line. So there's a better sensitivity which is shown. So we're waiting that the validation goes through and we can use it in the national program. TrueNut is an indigenous test made in India, which we validated in many of the ICMR sites and made it available. This is an excellent test which is there mainly because I do not need an AC room, I do not need an UPS, I do not need infrastructure as we require for a CPNAT. Here I can charge it and take it, and therefore at the district level we felt this was an ideal machine which can be used. It is two parts. One is where you prepare the specimen. If you detect in that, then only you follow by the second part where you look for rifampicin resistance. It comes with a single, a dual, as well as a 4-channel module. There are automated systems also available with this, but unfortunately in the program, it is not endorsed or rather validated. So we talk about this only when we are talking about this rapid detection technique. First line or line probe, this has the limitation that I need a lab, I need a PCR setup, I need technical expertise, and we need processes like decontamination. You extract out the DNA with the chemicals given by the kit, put it in the PCR machine, amplify the products, and then do hybridization. If you look at the results, it's in the form of line, and hence the name line probe assay, because the probes are put in the form of the line. Just a template to see. Once I know I've detected TB, then only I go ahead to interpret. Otherwise, no interpretation should be done in a quality assured lab. So if I see the TUB band, then I look for the loci or if there is enough amplification in the RPO, which talks about rifampicin, the CAT-G and INH, which talks about the isoniazid. If all the wild types are present and there is no mutation, such a strain, we say, is not showing any resistance. We used to initially call it sensitive, but now we are saying resistance not detected. Whereas if there is a missing wild type and or a presence of a mutation band, then we say it is resistance detected or resistance inferred. There are certain terminologies which we have now introduced in the program, which talks about inferred. That means I should have ideally a missing with an appropriate mute band. But when the mute band is not there, but there is a missing wild type, I say it's inferred, okay? And that is the terminology change that we did as we got evidence to it. Similarly, in the second line, I look for same banding pattern for the Guide, which indicates quinolone, RRS for the second line injectable, and EIS for low level resistance to kanamycin. If you look at the sensitivity of the first line, for rifampicin, isoniazid, I will say it is very good. Quinolone, it is good, but now if you compare it with the XDR cartridge that I'm talking, it may be on the lower side that I said about. Okay? It is lower, but it is good as far as having a test available upfront in a smear positive patient. The cultures, which were initially what we were giving way back in 2009 as the upfront test, have now gone on the back seat. Why? Not because they're not sensitive or specific, but only because it takes a longer period of time. And yet, if you look, most of the time, these are my gold standard when the DSTs are concerned. We say 2 to 8 weeks. We get rapid growth up to 2 weeks at times, sometimes even 7 days in a good smear positive with the liquid culture, but 8 weeks is what it takes for the solid cultures. This is the only test that we are using in the program, and ideally, even in the private sector, should be used when you are doing the follow-up of a patient. The growth-based tests have a number of companies where you can use for cultures. This is how your LJ looks like. And if a lab is going ahead to do what we are saying as NTM or non-tuberculous, then LJ is used. Otherwise, most of the labs have shifted over from solid culture to liquid culture. There are many companies offering different machines in the market. For culture purposes, anyone is okay. But as far as DST or sensitivity is concerned, it is only the Midget 960 which has got endorsed, and that is what we are using in the program. The DST which is available in the program is quality assured. Any lab which comes in the program is certified by a national center where they give a panel testing. And presently, all the labs, more than 60 labs across India, are giving to rifampicin, isoniazid, that the drugs which I am listed over here. They have already passed the PT or the proficiency testing, therefore they are offering this upfront. Panel testing, clofazimine, is going on, and this will be available in the national program by the end of 2021. Our supranational labs, both at Delhi and Chennai, have passed the DST for BDQ and Delaminate. We are awaiting a panel for these tests. And once we pass the PT from any one of these two centers, then we will also be offering the drug sensitivity testing to these two drugs. So if you look, the choice is definitely a molecular, highly sensitive, specific upfront. If for some reason I need to, then it is culture, and that also liquid culture with an LPA, because now I'm going to get both parameters. I will not do a CBNAT on a liquid culture. And down we are showing the turnaround time. So coming back to this algorithm, which looks so complicated, and standalone, this is the only thing that they do. So 2 samples that you're sending to the standalone CBNAT site, they do the NAT test, and the second test is coming on to the tertiary care center. And wherever I detect resistance, this is what we follow up. This is just summarizing the algorithm. And so reflexly, I am doing each and every drug that is available, but not upfront because it is not justified. And to date, I will say the best lytic drug that you have is rifampicin and isoniazid. We don't want people jumping up to the second or the higher drugs just because they are there in the market. We want them to use the right drug, and therefore follow it in the stagger. And this is the other pattern that we're talking, just to summarize what I spoke about. Coming to the whole genome sequencing, and where do we stand at the national platform, this, or rather the sites which are giving the national program. We do know that whole genome sequencing, especially if you had a handheld nanotechnology, gives you better sensitivity, has a very short PAT, especially for nanopore when we're talking of a sample. Otherwise, you have to wait for the culture. Gives a lot of, because I can individualize the treatment. That is the hallmark. The cost may appear expensive, but actually, if you go to see, it is less, I would say. In 2018, there were 4 sites across India which were identified. JJ was one of them, where a whole genome sequencer, the Illumina platform, was put, and 1 site for a pyrosequencing in Northeast was there. So we had 5 sites which are available where training took place, and based upon the WHO, we were also, and we were hopeful that we started by the end of 1920 the sequencing for this. There are a number of sequencing platforms. People, if you look at even literature coming up from the India, was giving Sanger and Pyro sequencing, which we say targeted platforms, which are there. We also dabbled a little bit with the Pyro sequencing, not at our side, but with the help of Hinduja. And of course, coming to what I will be talking about, the NGS, because we have used this next generation sequencing at JJ, both for targeting as well as for the whole genome sequencing. When we say target, that means I already know what are the targets I'm going to do, the set of genes that I'm going to do. And in this case, it is the TB and the genes that are associated with resistance that I'm going to see. As opposed to that, when we do whole genome, which I know Chaitali will be going more into the detail, we talk about the complete whole genome and we look out for all mutation, irrespective, but maybe report only those which are associated with that. Let's come to the target sequencing and our experience when we work with the target sequencing. We had this because we are, MSF is a public-private partnership with Govandi district, and we were linked with the Govandi district, and we worked with the Dplex platform using a MySeq platform, which we had over here. Now, this Dplex platform or the kits which are there, it detects resistance to, not only it identifies the species, but detects a resistance to majority of the drugs that are using for TB. It had pyrazinamide, ethambutol, rifampicin, and it had 4 targets as far as isoniazid was concerned. It also detected the resistance to all the injectables that I was using and the quinolones. In addition to etenamide, it had additional gene parameters over here. And it also spoke about the target mutations, which was for clofazimine in the RV 0678 and linezolid. Now, if you look at this, it said that you can do directly from the clinical sample, but the limitation for this was that it gave us results only when the sample was 2+ and above. That means I could not do anything for scanty, and even for 1+, we did not have a very good result when we were doing the NGS platform. So in this, if you go to see, it takes around 5 days for me to give you directly from the sample. So we extract the DNA, we amplify it by using the kit, master mix that comes along with the kit. We purify the products, we quantify them, and we prepare the sequence library. We pool the library, quantify them, and then put it in the MySeq platform, which usually takes the 4th day. The FASTQ files which are there are uploaded on with the access code which comes with the kit, and then the data is analyzed using the Dplex pipeline. Of course, the results we can see visually and get a printout. This is how the reports would come to us. It would give us 13 drugs, and in a color code, it would tell us whether we are seeing a resistance which is normally associated with the, a mutation which is normally associated, or are we seeing a mutation which is normally not associated with a resistance. It also told us that there was no mutation seen in the target that I was detecting, and it also detected anything. So if you look, anything which was red, meaning have detected a mutation, green, meaning no mutation, and blue, indicating that it did not, it saw a mutation, but usually that mutation was not being reported in literature as associated with resistance. It also gave you the reference based on which they were giving the result over there, and for the uncharacterized also variants it gave you the polygotype and spoke about the lineage. So we had also the lineage over here, and it also told you whether you saw mixed infection. So then you'll ask me why we didn't take it. First and foremost, the kit was very expensive. Secondly, we thought we could do from the sample, but 2+ and above. And majority of the results, we could have got it at a cheaper, whether I'm using a second line or if I go in for a whole genome sequencing. And therefore, in the program, though we muted this in the program, we never took it up because of the cost factor that it was speaking. The whole genome sequencing, if you look, then, like I said, for any bacteria, if I do, I need to grow the bacteria. I need to extract out the DNA. There are various technologies that can use, and then cut it in what we call as by using molecular scissors, make multiple copies by doing the thermal cycling, and then sequence it in the sequencer. Similarly, when you use it for TB, we extract out the sample. The starting point may be the sputum if I'm doing the Dplex, or the culture if I am doing for the whole genome. Prepare the library, we batch, pool, sequence, and then analyze the data. So the sputum sample for a Dplex was a starting point. The culture was a starting point as far as the whole genome was concerned. Once we got the DNA, we did the library preparation. We put it. Why I'm running fast? Because I'm sure the Chaitali will go much more slower and explain this technology to you. We have the library pool. We loaded the sequencer, ran the sequencer, produced, or rather the FASTQ files which were there were then loaded. It looks very simple, it looks very easy, and any lab can do the sequencing. The problem comes, what do you do with the FASTQ files and how do you analyze it? In addition, there are a number of solutions which were introduced, right from automation in the extraction to how you prepare the library, and of course, using a targeted sequencing by using a ready-made kit, and for data analysis, which was the main challenge. The sequencing platform, I'll come to that also. There are multiple sequencing platforms which are available for TB, but if you go to the majority of the sites are using what we call as the Illumina platform. We also use the MySeq Illumina platform. It was there. It follows the sequencing by synthesis and gives good results as far as TB is concerned. We have the Thermo Fisher machine also, but unfortunately, this is not very good as far as the TB is concerned, because if you see the last I said, read coverage of 80 or GC rich, that is in the G+C rich, which is the hallmark of my TB, who did not give a good coverage as far as TB was concerned. Then when this technology was shown to us, I think 4 years back, we were very excited. Oh, now we have something where I can get the results in 2 minutes. But somehow this is yet struggling because of the Putum, which is there coming in the way. It's not, I think, given yet good results, but we're yet hopeful that they will come up with much more technology where I can use it as a point of care. Slide just gives you the differences. All the technologies either differ in the read length, the accuracy, how many reads per run, and the time. And like I said, among the target sequencing, Pyro has proved good, and we have multiple private labs who give you a good result for target sequencing using the Pyro platform, and among the sequencing platform for TB, where it is concerned, Illumina. So like I said, doing the sequencing is not an issue. Analyzing the data is an issue, which is also in the national program quite a big challenge that we are facing. Not only they gave us infrastructure, but when it comes technical expertise, when you require much more technical expertise, manpower to run this machine. You require somebody to analyze the data. That is a bioinformatics person in the program. But when I'm transferring the FASTQ file, what you require is a good line also. So we have a broad width of 100 Mbps just only for my Illumina platform, so that all my data could be uploaded. There are a number of bioinfo pipelines which are available. And we at our center are using the micropredictor. Even WHO has this RISEQ platform where anybody, when they have the FASTQ file, can upload it. In the national program, for us, protection of our data is also one of the issues, and therefore sharing it with site is one thing which is a challenge for us. This is my lab at JK, where we are doing the whole genome sequencing presently only for epidemiological purposes. So, like I'm stressing, though we can do it for drug sensitivity, we in the program are doing it only for molecular or finding out how it's there. So all the 5 centers are doing it, and we are doing it in baby steps that we are doing for surveillance. Okay, when stray cases do come in, we are putting them up for susceptibility. Each has its advantages and its challenges. Now, when this exercise of when so many labs came forward giving WGS, it was whether this mutation which is coming out with the whole genome sequencing, how much is it related actually with resistance to the drug? So this exercise was given by WHO to find, and they found out what was known as the likelihood ratio and an odd ratio. And based on that, if I see a mutation, they gave it high confidence. That means it is definitely associated with resistance, moderate, minimal, no, or intermediate. Based upon this, if you go to see, as far as TB is concerned, they gave good for isoniazid, rifampicin, they gave good for quinolone, and they gave not very good, but they did give something for the pyrazinamide and amikacin because the sensitivity was not that good. Okay, so if you look, sequencing definitely is most accurate. When you have the high throughput machines, you can do much more than what we can do with the MySeq. It's definitely cheaper when I look at all what I'm going to do and how fast I can get the results, especially a DST. But to date, it is still present on culture. So I cannot do at present a good whole genome unless I have a cancer with me. The best accuracy for rift and paracetamide probably equivalent to phenotypic, INH, quinolone, aminoglycoside group, and to the new drugs yet to be studied. So if you look, where do I put it? I have yet not put it in the national program. But if I have to put it, I will yet put it after my expert if I'm doing a target. Similarly, if I am doing whole genome, I will yet put it after my expert. So once I grow it, then I will not only do sequencing, but also the phenotypic, because we need to have enough data to relate to the mutation that is going to be seen when I do the sequencing with these samples. So both of them, whether it is whole genome or target, have their own strength and they have their own weakness. But each, when new molecular tests have been introduced, they've always said, put them right, because each and every complements the other one. You cannot say this is good, this is bad. Every test used in the right way, in the right time, is good for it is there. So if you look at the current knowledge gap as far as we are concerned for this molecular, we yet have not completely determined, though there are references, but not yet determined which are the genes associated with miraculin, clofazimine, linezolid, and delaminate. Understanding of discordance, especially when I get sensitive in my liquid, but resistance to genotypic, because we don't do MIC. There is yet discordance unless I do MIC, because I am doing 1% proportion method as far as phenotypic is concerned. And the contribution to the resistance over there. Yet, after doing all these tests, efflux pumps or other mechanisms are not spoken about. So if you go to see, there are a lot of questions, but every modality that we do, either in the program or in the lab, has to work complementary. That's my lab. Of course, it looks empty. It is the photo taken before we had, it was just made. And we are not only certified by the national program, but it is also accredited, even my WTS and my molecular platform is NABL accredited. So again, thanks. And if there are any questions, I think it is after that, I'll be more than welcome to address those questions.
Thank you, Dr. Amita. That was a really exhaustive talk covering both the length and the breadth and the width of the entire TB domain and the diagnosis. The questions, as we've indicated, will be taken at the end of the session. So I would now request our second speaker, Dr. Chaitali, to start with her session.
So, thank you, Dr. Aparna, for the kind invite, and Dr. Amita for such an informative talk. Actually, you have covered all the aspects, and thankfully, haven't included the much of the technological details which has been covered by you. So I'll just quickly go through my presentation, which is which has been covered by you. I am not talking about. So at the end of this session, we can summarize the impact of detection that has been already taken care by Dr. Amita's talk, turnaround time, and the affordability of TB whole genome sequencing. So as Dr. Amita have rightly said that, there is a sensitivity and specificity is or decided for the drugs when it comes to the treating TB patient. So there is a few standard regimen which has been given, and the efficacy in patient with the drug sensitive TB is more as compared to the efficacy of the patients in the drug resistant strains. So MDR TB treatment success is totally depending on the drugs use, combination of the drugs, and the duration of the treatment. I'm not going much into the algorithm, but yes, what I have to highlight here is that's what Dr. Amita have been also highlighted, that the dollar, which is a sign, that is the smear status for required positive for the FLLPA or the SLLPA. So if not, then sample goes for the culture, and then we have to perform this molecular or genotypic test on the culture. So basically here we are affecting the TAT, and also for the star marks, where are few of the antibiotics where the access of these particular drugs or for DST is not to the patients. So here I'm mentioning about the turnaround time for the patients, which has been detected as a pre-analytical TAT, analytical TAT, and post-analytical TAT. So when patient has been identified at the NAT site, it has been got referring for the testing and specimen collection and packaging, that has been identified as a pre-analytical TAT. When it coming to the lab, patient specimen received at the lab, testing is happening, and then reporting result for that particular test is happening. That sample comes to us, that is the intermediate laboratories where LPA labs, and then again laboratory takes its time to result, and there is another, when it comes to MDR, there is a pre-treatment evaluation package needs to be done for this patient and time required for that, and then treatment initiation happens. So this is the benchmark which is highlighted in the guidelines of a TBC India. So which says that when it comes to a NAT, even though it is a turnaround time for this test is just 2 hours, but the whole three, that is pre-analytical, analytical, and post-analytical TAT takes 4 to 7 days to get the report and start the treatment or the regimen. When it's come to line probe assay, it may varies from 5 to 9 days. When it comes to liquid culture or DST, it may goes to 29 to 58 days. So mean average TAT says to be 42 days. But as Dr. Amita had rightly said, it will be totally depending on the smear status of the patient. If smear is positive, definitely patient will get the report earlier than what has been written over here. Also for the follow-up culture, currently only diagnostic test which is available, which is a gold standard, that is a culture, that is a liquid culture. I'm not going into much, but I just want to highlight much deeper here, as Dr. Amita have been taken care of this. But I just want to highlight here is that the acceptable level of a contamination when it comes to the solid culture, it is 3 to 5%, and accepted level of a contamination for automated liquid DHT culture is 8 to 10%. So when it comes to this testing, any culture is get contaminated, then we have to reprocess the sample which is available in the laboratory again, or otherwise we have to ask the patient and give the sample again. So basically this will again include 1 week of a TAT for getting the detection of the patient. So this is how basically this turnaround time works, and that basically delays the treatment for the patient. Now, there are few technical challenges in traditional DST. Basically, setup of a DST requires understanding of several steps. Also, it is a mix of, there may be errors if the person who is doing the test, if not, experience or expertise, then the critical concentration, inoculum size, and it requires technician to reduce variability of the phenotypic DST method. Whereas as compared to phenotypic DST, genotypic DST or molecular DST methods are supposed to be less operator dependent than conventional DST, and there have few objective and measurable parameters that can be used for a QC. So this is the publication by Nikolovsky, which says that the error rate of tuberculosis DST by phenotypic method and molecular method, and which has been grouped by individual drugs. So if you can see this red color graph, which detects the phenotypic DST, whereas green color shows the DST on crude extract using molecular tools, and blue color, which gives us the DST on culture using molecular tools. So if you can check the error rate as compared to the antibiotic and group of antibiotic, the error rate varies substantially between drugs. For PZA is showing the higher error rate, which has been followed by amikacin and ethambutol and streptomycin, whereas the proportion of the incorrect result for the second line drugs, that is fluoroquinolones and kanamycin, was lower and similar to that of first-line drugs like rifampicin and isoniazid. So it shows that there is a scope of improvement in all technologies for newer drug as well as the few drugs. So it's not about the genotypic or phenotypic testing, but always there is a few gaps in between this. So why this happens? Because there is an occurrence of discrepancy between the DST performed on liquid versus solid culture and molecular assays. And not every genotypic modification of a drug resistant is associated with a gene which affects the phenotypic resistant equally. So based on the MIC values or silent mutations or canonical mutation, which have to be taken into consideration, and Dr. Amita have been already touch base this point. So eventually, the type of a mutation will be relevant for the patient's management, and not all the mutations affecting drug resistance or associated genes are always equal. So we have to take in the identification of the nature of the mutation is needed for accurate diagnosis of resistance. So what we are looking for and what are the barriers is to understand the SNP and DST relationship. And also we need to understand the SNP clinical outcome relationship along with the mutations, also if there are any rare mutations. But basically the barriers currently are, there are few studies which are correlating SNPs with MICs and with patients' outcome. So the need of an hour is the whole genome sequencing of a TB, which diagnose rapidly and show exact affecting TB, including its complete drug resistant profile, and thus allows the clinicians to identify the best treatment regimen to combat the disease. And the implementation of whole genome sequencing will benefit the NTP, providing data for surveillance of resistance to different anti-TB drugs and important information for high burden countries to set TB control strategies and priorities. So taking this into account, it has been already incorporated into the guidelines of a PMTT, and it says that WGS has a great potential for rapidly diagnosing drug resistant TB in diverse clinical reference laboratory setting. Taking this into account, we at ThyroCare, along with the partnership with Haystack, had launched whole genome sequencing for a TB. So ThyroCare is a 25 years old laboratory, basically involved into the with Good Connect Network Pan India, and it is focused on quality, speed, and affordability with the same goal. We have started Focus TB, the division which is specifically for TB diagnostics. So we are armored with all the required certifications for NTP programs. Also, we are an IPAC partner laboratory with ISO, CAP, and NABL certification. So when we launched whole genome sequencing, by added on advantage of it gives the complete antibiotic coverage of 18 antibiotics, whereas culture DST gives it for a typical number of antibiotics, which is already into the algorithm and few more. Turnaround time for this, as we are batching up the samples, it is 10 to 12 days. So basically it covers totally 18 drug sensitivity testing. It is a TAT is as low as compared to the genotypic and phenotypic bucket of the test, which is included into the algorithm. It also gives the information about whether it is patient is having mixed infection or any strain. And also it gives you information about the NTM or MOF. So we have kept it as a launch price of 3,000 rupees, and we give the clinical interpretation data in the state-of-art genomic reporting in the line with color molecular reporting standards. So the report format which we have given is as simple as Gene Expert, which totally red color antibiotics detects here the mutation conferring drug resistance detected. So these drugs cannot be used, whereas green colored, which says that the mutation conferring drug resistance are not detected. So this is the paradigm shift in the genomic reporting. Also on the first page, we are giving how many antibiotics and whether the presence of drug resistance is detected or not. Besides this, it gives the percentage of reads, as Dr. Amita has told already about it. Also, it gives the strain typing and it gives the information about the mixed infection or any other NTM or MOTT if grown. So it's designed for the scale. It is always safer to handle DNA as compared to the cultures. It is automation can be done with a liquid hydra system and also bioinformatics offering Haystack. It is having inbuilt QC and data checks. Real-time data or digital data can be pushed up directly into the portal via LIS or the MIS, which is available online. So in nutshell, we can say that TGS provide greater resolution than conventional genotypic for investigating recent TB transmission or drug resistance. It's a one-stop source of curated genomic and related metadata from MTB strains. And we are transitioning TGS at the standard method of TB diagnostic by providing antibiogram of 18 drugs within 12 days at affordable cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chaitali. Thanks for the lovely talk on TGS and the ThyroCare offerings. We will now have the Q&A session. So the two modalities by which the Q&A, you can either raise your hand or we will answer the questions which are in the chat box. Before we start, I have a question for Dr. Amita. Dr. Amita?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Amita was just, you'll have done the project on the WGS and both with the targeted sequencing as well as the whole genome sequencing. And so what are the advantages of whole genome sequencing, which you have indicated, but the point that I am coming from is that what could be some of the roadblocks which may be there in the adoption? Like when can it become a part of the RNTCP guidelines?
See, it's like I said, it is already part of it, but not for the diagnostic, not to give the DST. So of course, DST you are there. I mean, you will do it, but we're not giving it for the patient care from the DST module. We are basically looking presently from the angle of, you can say, transmission to look for clusters, for looking. So basically, it is used more from the epidemiological purposes. So that is what we are doing at present. I'm not saying it will not be ideal. Our goal is that we have to do with the DST, but we're talking of large numbers. We're talking of, like I said, this pandemic gave literally a break to us. Otherwise, by now we would have even transitioned to the DST. So the roadblock, if you're going to see, for me, I see more in the public sector we need more lab setups. 5 labs may not be able to do the justice to the entire Indian. And when we're going to offer that totally free of cost, we need more trained personnel. We lost a lot of trained personnel due to the pandemic because a lot of private RNTCP labs, they migrated over there. So we were back with square one over there. But yes, in the national program, we are doing a lot of PPP model with the private partner is there. So I'm sure if ThyroCare, which is already part of my NTP, will also maybe, even if you order, you are offering this to the patient care for the DST purpose, I'm sure your data will be available to the national program, where as far as we are concerned with the transmission. So in the better or in the positive sense, I will say, yes, it is going to be helpful, is there. We may take a little long time. You have taken the leap and we're very happy that at least it's available for the patient. That is there.
And I also believe that what may happen is that there could be a genotype-phenotype correlation, and in those terms also it may increase our current understanding of drug resistance. Yes,
definitely. And I only hope that when you are going to offer this sequencing, you will also do vis-a-vis by culture. See, we do, I know there is a factor of money which is concerned, but I hope you keep the cultures so that if you have to do a phenotypic, because all mutations do not transit to or translate to phenotypic resistance. And unless data is there, and I'm not saying it doesn't mean that it is not there because we are not doing MIC, but we would definitely want to have that data also. So cultures, we request that you keep those cultures because your start point is the cultures.
We're also seeing a couple of questions. which I will read out in the chat box. This is from Jayant Deva Sundaram. So, is there any attempt, the question is there any attempt to automate these algorithms such that workers in the field have a user-friendly interface to make timely decisions necessary for successful diagnosis and treatment of the patient? So this question can be directed to, this is a very technical question, so it could be directed to Dr. Chaitali. Do you want to take this question?
Hello.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Aparna, can you just read it out once?
So I think what Devasundaram is trying to ask is that, is there any attempt to automate these algorithms? So what I understand is maybe he's talking about the bioinformatics aspect, so that whenever a genome sequencing may be done, is there any which can help in terms of the analysis? So just let me repeat the question if I've understood it correctly. Is there any attempt to automate these algorithms?
So which algorithm he's talking about, whether it's patient's algorithm
Yeah.
or TGS algorithm?
So can we unmute Devasundaram?
Hello. Okay, yeah, okay, he's talking.
Yeah. Is it possible to unmute Devasundaram?
Yes, Mr. Jayant, you can please go ahead. Mr. Jayant, you can ask your question. You are unmuted.
I think Mr. Jayant is not responding. Let us take this question subsequently, because we need to have further clarity on two aspects, whether it is a patient-related algorithm which he is referring to, or is it the algorithm for the TGS, which will enable the analysis, like a plug-and-play system, which will enable the genome analysis. So we will park this question and take it later. I will direct this.
No, sorry, Dr. Aparna, he has written the question in chat.
Okay.
So what he meant is that, I mean, how do you translate this to the field in short turnaround time?
Okay.
So that is his question. So I would like to highlight here, as Dr. Amita have been already told about, if she wants to put this whole genome sequencing, then she'll definitely put it after the CBNAT. So when patients reach to the CBNAT site, after that, depending on the drug resistance for rifampicin, this technique can be taken into the field in short turnaround time. I hope I've replied your question satisfactorily.
I'll just add in, Aparna. It is not only, initially we used to do only the further testing for a drug resistance in rifampicin, but now we are taking up even the sensitive. So if I'm looking for a personalized regime, then yes, it will be the duty of the lab to do it and to interpret this mutation. So as a clinician, you will get it in simplest word. Even the LPA, if you go to, when I'm seeing mutation, I'm also now telling you, okay, this is associated with low level, don't you give a high dose of such so-and-so drug. This is with high level, please do not give this drug. The same thing will be given even, I hope, in this, but that is what we expect when, especially when I see some novel mutation, we'll be telling you this is not associated. This is associated. So don't put it in your combination or don't put it in your treatment regime. So that will definitely be given based upon evidence that is there.
Yeah, Dr. Amita, will this be something like the LPA, where the resistance is inferred versus detected, where that there is a different, if it is inferred, then where you could do with low level.
Exactly. Because that a few years back, my reports were never done. Now, even in the national program, we have changed our reporting. So that, because we know at the field level, especially at the periphery, we don't have a pulmonologist. We have a simple, many times not even an allopathic doctor. So he should understand, because when he's taking a combination or he's doing at that table, he knows what the report is. They try to make it as simple so that the clinician picks it up. So similarly, this DST which comes in from the whole genome, when it says mutation, it will also tell you, speak to you, this is what it means by that.
Right. Okay.
Hope we have answered it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the second question is also directed to Dr. Amita Joshi. This is by Dr. Sandeep Bhattacharya. He says that at a cost of rupees 3,000 per test, what would still be the barriers to the widespread use of WGS in the program, especially when no trained personnel will be needed at,
Oh no, who says for WGS you need a trained person? Sorry. No, 3,000 tests you're talking in cost. When we give in the national program, we give it at 0 paisa. Whoever, whether it is anybody who's coming, whether I'm giving a GP for LCA, I'm doing a full DST and giving, it is given at no cost. So even the WGS results, which will be given in the program, is free of cost. And it is open to anybody. Anybody can walk in, do it, and anybody can do it. Even a private practitioner can send his samples to the lab and we do it.
Dr. Amitas, your voice,
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
So 3,000, you might be saying 3,000 is cheap, but in the national program, I give every investigation, whether it is a simple ZF or it is a complicated liquid DST or all the modalities. Remember, everything is given to the patient at 0 cost. We don't charge the patient in the national program. So 3,000 for me, the national program, especially when India is the country with maximum number of TB cases and MDR also. That is pinches poor man.
Right. The next question is by Mr. Yogeshwar Gauli. Which platform is preferable for WGS in terms of TAT, costing per sample, and simple report that can be understood without the help of any counselor?
It's not a platform. It is the software that I use for bioinformatics. Whatever platform ultimately is the informatics you're using. So I think that question Chaitali has already answered, which we were talking in terms of Thyrocare, where they are saying using the one which Haystack Analytics is doing. We have worked with that software. It's excellent software, simple and so I don't think there should be an issue where there is concern. Otherwise, there are many platforms which you can do. So doing the WGS is not an issue, but understanding what data has come up, that is the one is there. Platform, ideally, I don't know which one you're using, Chaitali. If you can speak which platform you're going to do for WGS.
We are using Illumina only, and the answer has been replied by you rightly that we have designed a report format which can be easily understood by the patient as well as by the clinician or the doctors who are reading it, and it's the same format in which CBNAT sites gives the report. So it's very easy to understand, and that can be interpret the result easily for all the antibiotics.
So basically this, obviates the need for any complicated bioinformatics which is required. And it's a very simple kind of a plug and play with which you will be able to get the results. But what about the data, Dr. Chaitali? It is regularly updated?
Has been regularly updated into the library, and it will be updated as per the analytics.
And also the variants which are,
so already present variants can be seen. If there is any novel mutations which has been found by updated library, that can also be checked for the drug resistance mutations, if any.
I will just be taking one more question because we've already overshot our time. So the question is for Dr. Chaitali from Dr. VK Srivastava. What are the prerequisites for sending the sample for WGS? What are the samples on which the test can be done?
So a sample type here you can send us is a sputum. Basically, we culture it first for 5 days. That is, we enrich the sample to get the consecutive growth which is required to get and extract the DNA which is required for whole genome sequencing. And prerequisite is you have to send the sample in triple rare packing in cold chain if possible.
So Chaitali, will you be also taking culture? Now, since you're doing the GS, I'm sure there will be many labs which would like to send, since
Yeah,
facilities
direct
available.
culture are always welcome. Yes, direct cultures are always welcome because we'll definitely get good amount of DNA as compared to sample which has been enriched for 5 days. So cultures can be taken into consideration while doing WGS. Yes.
So is it the solid culture or the liquid that you're asking?
Anything. Whether solid or liquid, we can accept the cultures also. I can read one more question from Nandini Dasgupta. What is the minimum DNA amount you can use for it? So basically it requires the concentration of 2 ng per microliter. Dr. Nandini, if you're there online.
Okay. So I think we have already overshot our time, though there are multiple questions which are still, which this is such a, the topic which is there is, it's such a important aspect, and the entire novelty or the way it is, with the disruption that may be caused by the whole genome sequencing, specifically since, it is going to some of the aspects of culture DST, which it may specifically in terms of time, it may overcome those. So in those terms, this is going to whole genome sequencing will go a long way. But like Dr. Amita has already also mentioned, we have a learning curve which we will have to also understand, and that's why all the data we will have to correlate in varied terms. We could have projects on the same, we could have continuous even with prescribers who would be interested in understanding how their patients are, what are the clinical outcomes in terms of the WGS, and how it translates to them in terms of clinical outcomes will be what will be answered over the next I think a few months. I'm hopeful rather than years. So with that, I think we will end this session today. I want to thank both the speakers, Dr. Amita as well as Dr. Chaitali. They have taken a lot of effort to help us understand this entire diagnostic scenario in terms of TB, and also in terms of technical aspects, since this is a relatively technology which is relatively new, though the WHO has in its made very clear the technical guidelines for how the uptake of WGS and also the measurable quality control parameters which need to be put into place for any data which comes from a WGS. So with that, I thank you all, and I thank the participants. Also, I would like to make the announcement for our next in webinar series. Now, this webinar is our chief guest speaker is going to be Dr. Sandeep Bhattacharya, and the webinar is based on the World TB Day theme, which is the clock is ticking. Dr. Sandeep Bhattacharya will talk about the imperative, the clock is ticking, indicating the urgency, the new that we need to have in TB elimination. We need to and the new paradigms which in TB treatment. So once again, I thank you all and look forward to your participation in our subsequent webinars. Thank you.